Imagine this. A mother, draped in rags, clutching the hands of 3 small children, stumbling across a desert plain under the hollow glow of a thin crescent moon. Their shadows stretch long against the dust, bending and breaking with every faltering step. The prairie wind slices their skin like knives, yet the greater pain gnaws from within. Hunger, the kind that turns the stomach into a clenched fist. For 3 nights they have wandered. No roof, no fire, no food, except for the memory of it. The children's lips are cracked. Their feet bleed through torn shoes. Each night, the cries grow softer, not because the suffering lessens, but because exhaustion steals even the strength to weep. Somewhere beyond the horizon, coyotes howl. Their voices ripple through the darkness, reminders that even the predators are less desperate than this fragile family. The mother whispers a prayer, not to survive, but simply to reach morning. She doesn't ask for safety anymore. Safety to her feels like a story told to children, a myth. And then a shadow appears. At first, it's just a silhouette against the breaking dawn, a lone rider, a cowboy. His figure seems unreal, as if carved from the same dust that swallowed their hope. He dismounts, his boots sinking into the soil. Slowly, he approaches. The children freeze. The mother grips them close. For in this land, strangers carry the weight of both salvation and destruction. One hand might feed you, the other might claim you. The man kneels, lowering himself to their level. His voice cuts through the silence, quiet yet steady. "I'll keep you safe," he whispers. 4 simple words, but words are never simple. They carry history, they carry intent, they carry the power to either heal or to bind. The children don't yet know what those words mean, but the mother does. She knows that safety always comes with a price. This is not just a story about survival in the old American frontier. It is a story about us, about the human heart's desperate craving for protection and the dangerous bargains we strike in pursuit of it, because safety is not merely shelter from the storm. It is a currency exchanged between the powerless and the powerful. It is the promise every government, every leader, every father, every husband has spoken in one form or another. "Trust me, I'll keep you safe." But history whispers back with a chilling truth. Those who promise safety often demand obedience. Protection can be both sanctuary and shackle. Think about it. From the earliest tribes huddling around fire to the great empires patrolling with armies, humans have always bartered freedom for the illusion of security. We see it in the mother accepting the cowboy's protection. We see it in citizens surrendering rights for the promise of peace. We see it in the way fear governs us, generation after generation. So ask yourself, what would you do, stumbling barefoot through the wilderness, your children starving, when a stranger leans close and whispers, "I'll keep you safe"? Would you believe him? Would you surrender your fate into his hands? Or would you pause, remembering that every promise of safety carries with it an invisible contract, one that rarely favors the weak? This story begins in the wilderness, but its echo reaches into our own lives. For though the prairie winds may no longer whip our faces, and coyotes may no longer haunt our nights, we wander through new deserts, deserts of uncertainty, fear, and doubt. We search for anchors in a world that feels as merciless as that barren plain. And when someone, a leader, a lover, a stranger, whispers, "I'll keep you safe," we feel the same pull that the mother did on that third night. Hope collides with caution. Desperation collides with doubt, because safe is not a destination. It's a cage of perception, sometimes a warm embrace, sometimes a velvet chain. The cowboy's whisper is the opening chord in a symphony about human fragility, about trust, about power, about how the most comforting words can conceal the sharpest hooks. As we step deeper into this story, hold on to the image of that mother and her children in the dark. Hold on to the trembling silence between her heartbeat and his whisper. Because what follows is not only a tale of survival, it is an examination of the promise that defines human history itself, the search for safety, and the price we pay for it. The image of a woman stumbling through the wilderness with her children is not only historical, it is timeless. It is an archetype, one etched into human memory, repeated across cultures, religions, and ages. To wander is to be cast out. To wander is to lose the illusion of home. It is a condition as old as humanity itself. Consider the first stories is ever told. Adam and Eve, banished from Eden, forced to walk into a barren world, stripped of comfort. Abraham, commanded to leave his homeland, stepping into an unknown land with nothing but faith. The Israelites, condemned to 40 years of desert wandering, their hunger teaching them obedience to a distant God. These stories are not about geography, they are about the soul. To wander is to live without anchor, without certainty, to exist in a perpetual state of searching. The mother in the dust-choked plain is another echo of this myth. She is not simply a woman with children, she is the embodiment of exile, of every human who has ever been torn from the familiar and thrust into the unknown. Wandering is not always chosen. More often, it is forced. Exile, famine, war, drought. In the American frontier, families became wanderers, not because they dreamed of adventure, but because survival demanded it. Settlers driven by failed crops, orphans fleeing burned towns, indigenous tribes uprooted by expansion, forced to march thousands of miles away from the lands that once sang their names. The West was not only a place of new beginnings, it was a graveyard of displacement. To wander is to carry silence in your bones, the silence of belonging denied. But wandering is not confined to the past. The archetype lives on. Look at today's world, the endless caravans of refugees marching across continents, their children clinging to the hope of a border that might not welcome them. Look at the homeless, drifting from street to street, their lives reduced to bags and blankets. Look even at us, scrolling endlessly on glowing screens, wandering not across deserts, but across fractured attention, exiled from presence, lost in infinite distraction. The forms differ. The essence is the same. A life without rootedness, a search without guarantee of arrival. The wandering mother on the prairie represents more than hunger and exhaustion. She represents a universal condition, the instability of existence itself. Because beneath the comforts we build, the houses, the governments, the promises, we remain wanderers at heart. We are never truly settled. Even in moments of peace, some part of us drifts. We wonder if the ground beneath us will hold. We wonder if the walls will keep standing. We wonder if safety itself is nothing more than a pause between storms. This is why wandering resonates so deeply in human imagination. It is the space where faith is tested, where the thin line between despair and hope becomes visible, where the illusion of control is stripped away, and we are forced to ask, what sustains us when nothing is certain? For the mother, it was not food. She had none. It was not shelter. She had none. It was the fragile thread of belief that moving forward, one more step, one more night, might lead to safety. For us, it might be something different, a cause, a dream, a relationship, but the essence is the same. To wander is to live by faith, not in certainty, but in possibility. And yet wandering is also dangerous, because the wanderer, stripped of power, becomes vulnerable to anyone who offers protection. The refugee at the border, the homeless person in the shelter, the exiled tribe before the colonizer, the mother before the cowboy. Those who wander are those who most desperately long to hear the words, "I'll keep you safe." And it is precisely this longing that makes them most easily controlled. But here is the paradox. Wandering is not only weakness, it is also transformation. Every exile, every journey through the wilderness has the potential to remake the soul. Stripped of home, of certainty, of power, the wanderer discovers truths hidden from those who remain sheltered. Abraham became the father of nations. The Israelites forged an identity in the desert. Even the exiled tribes, though broken, carried forward wisdom that outlived the empires that displaced them. To wander is to be vulnerable, but it is also to stand on the threshold of becoming. The mother and her children, then, are not only figures of despair, they are figures of a universal human passage, the confrontation with nothingness, and the possibility of rebirth. When the cowboy whispers, "I'll keep you safe," he is not only speaking to her, he is speaking to every wanderer across time, every refugee, every exile, every restless soul who has ever longed for a place to belong. The question is not whether wandering ends. The question is what safety costs when it finally arrives. When the cowboy stepped down from his horse and whispered, "I'll keep you safe," he became more than a man. He became an archetype, a figure larger than life, embodying not just one moment of mercy, but centuries of myth. Because the cowboy is not simply a rider on the frontier. He is the cultural shadow of masculine power, protector, wanderer, judge, and sometimes executioner. The cowboy entered history in dust and blood. He lived where law was fragile, where justice was not written in books, but in the speed of a draw or the weight of a man's word. He carried both danger and salvation. To settlers, he was the shield against bandits and raiders. To children, he was the figure who made the wilderness less terrifying. But to the displaced tribes, he was the advance guard of empire, a harbinger of broken treaties and stolen land. The cowboy has always been a paradox, both savior and oppressor, guardian and outlaw. His shadow stretches in two directions at once. Psychologically, he embodies what humanity often seeks in moments of desperation: the strong protector, independent enough to survive alone, violent enough to defend when threatened, yet crucially bound by a code of morality that keeps his violence restrained. This restraint is what makes the cowboy different from the outlaw. He has the same capacity for harm, but channels it under the guise of justice. He is the man who carries the gun, but promises to use it only for you, never against you. That is why his whisper, "I'll keep you safe," feels believable, because the archetype of the cowboy convinces us that strength, when softened by honor, is trustworthy. But here lies the hidden tension. Protection is never neutral. When someone says, "I'll keep you safe," they are not only offering comfort, they are also establishing a hierarchy. Safety is never a gift freely given. It is a bond, and bonds come with chains. For the mother and her children, the cowboy's protection may have been salvation, but it was also submission. Their lives, once wandering but their own, now became tethered to his will. In this light, his whisper transforms not only "I'll keep you safe," but also "You are now mine to keep." This dynamic is not confined to the dusty frontier. It repeats wherever humans long for protection. Consider the political leader who frames himself as the cowboy of a nation. He rides in during times of chaos, promising to guard the people from enemies, both foreign and within. His strength, his independence, his willingness to fight, these qualities mirror the frontier myth. And like the cowboy, he gains loyalty not only through strength, but through the promise that his violence will be moral, restrained in service of the people. But power once granted rarely remains restrained. The promise of safety often grows into a demand for obedience. We see the same in religion. The shepherd who guards his flock echoes the cowboy's vow: "Follow me, and I'll keep you safe." Trust becomes dependency. Dependency becomes surrender. And in surrender, the line between salvation and control blurs. Even in modern media, figures position themselves as cultural cowboys, independent voices who promise to shield their audience from lies, corruption, or manipulation. They whisper, "Trust me, I'll keep you safe from deception." And in that trust, they gain influence over the minds they claim to liberate. The cowboy is not just a man in the wilderness. He is the embodiment of an eternal power exchange, protection in return for submission. It is easy to forget that every fortress is also a cage, every guardian a potential captor. For the mother and her children, this truth hid behind the softness of his whisper. Exhausted, starved, desperate, she may not have asked what safety would cost, but the cost was there, waiting. It always is. There is a reason the cowboy myth survives. It speaks to our deepest anxieties about chaos and our willingness to entrust freedom to the one who promises order. We want to believe in him. We want to believe that strength can exist without corruption, that power can protect without enslaving. We want to believe that the gun on his hip is a shield, not a threat. But history teaches otherwise. The cowboy archetype has been used again and again to justify domination, the expansion of empires, the enforcement of laws that serve the few, the silencing of those branded as outlaws or threats. Every time we accept the whisper of safety, we risk surrendering more than we gain. And yet, without the cowboy, without the protector, survival feels impossible. The paradox cuts deep. We distrust power, yet we long for its shelter. We fear submission, yet we willingly kneel when the world grows too dark. This is the haunting beauty of the cowboy's shadow. He is both the answer to our prayers and the test of our freedom. He is the savior we hope for, and the captor we too often accept. So, when the cowboy leans close and whispers, "I'll keep you safe," it is not only a comfort, it is a mirror, a reflection of how humans, across time and place, navigate fear, power, and trust The question is never simply whether he will protect the family. The question is whether protection itself can ever be separated from control. The cowboy's whisper hangs in the air like a promise carved into stone. I'll keep you safe. But what does it really mean to be safe? Strip away the emotion, and safety is not an absolute condition. It is an illusion. A fragile story the human mind tells itself in order to endure chaos. Because here is the truth. No one is ever completely safe. Not the wanderer on the frontier, not the citizen in a guarded city, not the child behind locked doors. Safety exists only as long as uncertainty is kept out of sight. Philosophers have long wrestled with this paradox. Thomas Hobbes, writing in the 17th century, argued that life without protection was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. In his view, the only way humans could escape fear was to surrender freedom to a sovereign, a ruler powerful enough to impose order. Better a cage with walls than the wild with wolves. Sigmund Freud, centuries later, shifted the perspective inward. He suggested that safety was not just physical, but psychological. We long for authority figures, fathers, leaders, protectors, to soothe our unconscious anxieties. The protector becomes the substitute for the parent we once trusted to keep the monsters away, and modern psychology confirms it. Safety is not about the elimination of danger. It is about the perception of security. Studies show that people will often accept illusory safety, airport security theater, military parades, or political slogans, even if these measures do little to reduce real risks. The feeling of being safe is often more powerful than safety itself. The mother wandering with her children embodies this fragile truth. After 3 nights without food, her body weak, her mind fractured, what mattered was not evidence that the cowboy could protect her. What mattered was the whisper, the illusion, the fragile sense that at last the nightmare might end. This is how humans are wired. In moments of desperation, we will trade almost anything for the sensation of protection, freedom, autonomy, even dignity. And it is precisely here that the danger lies. Throughout history, rulers, institutions, and systems have exploited this trade-off. They understand that the craving for safety is stronger than the craving for freedom. Fear is the lever. Safety is the bait. The Roman emperors offered bread and circuses to distract the people from their vulnerability. Dictators in the 20th CE jury rose by promising to shield citizens from chaos, even as they dismantled liberties piece by piece. In times of war or terror, even democratic nations have demanded citizens sacrifice privacy, speech, and rights, all in the name of being safe. The equation is always the same. The greater the fear, the more willingly we surrender. The cowboy's whisper, then, is not unique to one family in the wilderness. It is the echo of every promise made by power to the vulnerable. But here is the paradox. Safety comforts us, but it also limits us. Think of the child who never leaves their home because their parents, in protecting them, also confine them. Think of the employee who clings to a job that drains their spirit because the paycheck provides the illusion of stability. Think of societies where freedom of speech is silenced, yet people accept it because silence feels safer than uncertainty. Safety can become a velvet prison, warm, familiar, but still a prison. Psychologists call this learned helplessness, when people stop resisting danger because they believe protection lies outside their control. Over time, They no longer attempt to act. They no longer fight. They simply wait for someone, a leader, a savior, a cowboy, to step forward and say, "I'll keep you safe." And the cruel irony is that once we depend on another for our safety, we are no longer safe at all. We are vulnerable to their mercy. The mother and her children, kneeling before the cowboy, remind us of this eternal human gamble. Desperation clouds judgment. The promise of protection soothes the terror of wandering, but in accepting it, she may have bound herself not only to salvation, but to servitude. This does not make her weak. It makes her human, because we all live within this tension. Every lock on our doors, every contract we sign, every law we obey. Each is a bargain, a little freedom traded for a little comfort. We convince ourselves that the bargain is necessary, that it makes us safe. But often, it makes us only feel safe. The deeper question is this: can true safety ever exist? Or is it always a mirage, shimmering on the horizon, drawing us forward, demanding sacrifices that never end? The cowboy cannot change the wilderness. He cannot stop the storms, the famine, the predators. He can only offer the illusion of control. And perhaps that illusion is enough. Perhaps it is all humans truly need, a story strong enough to calm the chaos inside. But illusions are fragile. They shatter the moment reality pierces them, the moment the protector fails, the moment the promise breaks. And then the safety we surrendered everything for reveals itself as a ghost. So when you hear the words, "I'll keep you safe," pause. Ask yourself, safe from what? And safe at what cost? Because safety is never free. It is always purchased, with trust, with obedience, with pieces of our freedom. And the cruelest truth is this: the more desperate we are, the higher the price we are willing to pay. The mother in the wilderness teaches us not only about suffering, but about the psychology of trust. In her, we see ourselves vulnerable, longing, willing to believe. And perhaps that is the greatest danger of all. Not that safety is an illusion, but that we would rather cling to an illusion than face the wilderness alone. The cowboy's whisper, "I'll keep you safe," does not belong to him alone. It is the voice of history itself. A voice that has echoed from thrones, pulpits, palaces, and boardrooms. Across every age, those who hold power have used the promise of protection as their a pest tool. They know the truth. Humans are willing to surrender almost anything when fear outweighs freedom. Picture the medieval village, smoke curling from thatched roofs, farmers tilling the soil under the shadow of a looming castle. The lord who owns the land steps forward, armored and armed, proclaiming to his peasants, "I will shield you from raiders and invaders. In return, you will give me your labor, your crops, your loyalty." It was not generosity. It was transaction. The castle walls were not free. They were built brick by brick with obedience. Protection became the currency of power. The greater the threat, whether real or exaggerated, the tighter the grip of the protector. History repeats the pattern like a ritual. Kings claimed divine right, presenting themselves as God's chosen guardians. Disobeying them was not only treason, but sin. Empires raised armies, insisting they expanded to secure their citizens, even as they conquered others. Colonial powers justified domination with the rhetoric of bringing safety to the colonized. And with each cycle, the whisper grows louder. "I'll keep you safe, if you obey." Fast forward to the modern age, and the machinery of protection evolves, but the contract remains the same. Governments deploy surveillance systems, watching every move in the name of public safety. Cameras on street corners, databases tracking identities, satellites tracing signals. The technology changes, but the promise does not. We must see you at all times, for your own good. Trust us, and you will be safe. Corporations do the same. Tech giants offer security for your data, for your online identity, but their safety nets come with strings. Harvesting your habits, your thoughts, your desires, they whisper, "We'll keep you safe from hackers, from scams, from chaos. Just give us access. Just surrender your privacy." The cowboy at the frontier becomes the CEO of Silicon Valley, both offering protection while tightening control. Even religion has wielded the same machinery. Temples and churches promised protection of the soul, sanctuary from damnation, safety not only in this life, but in eternity. The price? Obedience, tithes, allegiance to doctrine. Everywhere we look, safety is the coin of control. The genius of this machinery lies not in force, but in psychology. Fear is invisible, fear is contagious, and fear drives surrender more effectively than any sword or gun. When villagers feared invasion, they pledged themselves to their lord. When citizens feared crime, they accepted surveillance. When believers feared hell, they obeyed priests. When modern workers fear instability, they accept corporate dominance. The cowboy's whisper is amplified by institutions until it becomes a roar. "You cannot survive without me. I'll keep you safe. But only if you yield." This does not mean protection itself is a lie. The castle wall did protect. The army did repel invaders. The police do prevent crime. The problem is not protection, but the cost hidden beneath it. Because once the protector is in place, power rarely steps back. Castles became kingdoms. Kingdoms became empires. Surveillance expands, never retracts. The machinery grows, fueled by fear, until the whisper of safety drowns out the voice of freedom. Consider the United States after September 11, 2001. A nation traumatized by terror accepted sweeping surveillance laws, airport checkpoints, and foreign wars, all justified as necessary for safety. Decades later, many of those measures remain, long after the immediate fear has faded. The machinery of protection, once built, does not dismantle itself, or look further back, to the rise of fascist regimes in the 20th century. Hitler promised Germans protection from chaos, from economic collapse, from enemies within. Mussolini promised order and security in a fractured Italy. The result was Oberwetting, so complete that safety became indistinguishable from tyranny. The whisper can save, but it can also enslave. The mother in the wilderness, kneeling before the cowboy, is a miniature version of this history. She stands for all of us, caught between hunger and hope, between fear and the promise of shelter. Her desperation mirrors the desperation of nations. Her choice mirrors the choices of civilizations. And the cowboy, whether he is a lone rider, a king, a president, or a corporation, always asks the same thing. "I'll keep you safe, but what will you give me in return?" The machinery of protection is ancient, and it is not slowing down. It adapts to every era, wearing new disguises. A sword and shield in the medieval age, a badge and law in the modern state, a server and algorithm in the digital world. But beneath every disguise, the whisper remains the same. So the question for us is not whether protection exists. The question is how much of ourselves we are willing to sacrifice for the illusion of safety. Because once we surrender too much, we may discover that the walls built to guard us have also been built to contain us. The cowboy's whisper did not fade with the frontier. It simply changed clothes. Today, it arrives dressed in suits, in uniforms, in digital code. It comes from podiums, from glowing screens, from the glowing notifications on your phone. We'll keep you safe, it says again. But this time, the whisper is amplified through satellites, broadcast networks, and algorithms so vast they reach into every home, every thought, every decision. And just like the mother kneeling in the wilderness, modern societies keep leaning forward, listening. Fear is the oldest currency of power, and in our age, it has become industrialized. Terrorism warnings, pandemic alerts, economic collapse predictions, climate catastrophe, cybercrime, foreign enemies, domestic enemies. Each headline carries the same invisible thread, fear, and fear is always followed by the same prescription, surrender. Surrender your privacy so we can monitor threats. Surrender your freedom of movement so we can quarantine danger. Surrender your independence so we can provide stability. The cowboy of the old frontier now rides as governments, corporations, and media empires all whispering, louder than ever, "We'll keep you safe." Consider the war on terror. 2 towers fell, and with them fell illusions of invulnerability. Overnight, a new era of fear dawned. Governments across the globe introduced sweeping laws, surveillance expanded, wars were launched in foreign lands, justified as preemptive shields against unseen enemies. Citizens, afraid and grieving, agreed. They leaned in, much like the starving mother, believing that sacrifice was the only path to safety. Decades later, much of that machinery remains. Fear does not vanish. It simply reshapes. And then came the pandemic. Invisible, unpredictable, and global. A virus too small to see with the eye became the most powerful force in the world. Streets emptied, borders closed, families were divided. And again, the whisper returned. Governments said, "Trust us, follow us, obey us, we'll keep you safe." Tech companies promised, "Our apps will track exposure, our algorithms will monitor outbreaks, give us your data, and we will shield you." For some, it worked. Lives were saved. But the price was unmistakable. Personal freedoms shrank, surveillance deepened, and entire populations became more dependent on central authorities than ever before. Fear is profitable too. Corporations understand it well. Advertising rarely sells products anymore. It sells safety. Insurance commercials whisper, "Without us, you won't survive disaster." Tech companies warn of hackers, then sell security software. Social media platforms highlight dangers of misinformation, then declare themselves the guardians of truth. If only you'll trust, they're seen as soars. Even consumer products exploit this psychology, from bottled water sold as safer than the tap to home security systems that play on our dread of intruders. The same cycle repeats. Fear creates dependency, dependency creates control, and control creates profit. But perhaps the most sophisticated form of modern fear is not physical at all. It is digital. Think about it. Your phone buzzes. An alert screams about violence, disaster, or a looming threat. News cycles are curated not to inform, but to alarm. Fear glues attention, and attention fuels profit. Social media feeds amplify outrage and division. Each algorithm thrives on our unease. Platforms become the new cowboys, whispering, "Stay here, stay inside our walls, keep scrolling, keep sharing, and we'll protect you from loneliness, from irrelevance, from being forgotten." The modern citizen, like the frontier mother, kneels in front of a glowing screen and whispers back, "Yes, just keep me safe." Psychologists call it the security paradox. The more safety is promised, the more fragile we feel without it. The higher the walls, the greater the fear of what lies outside them. It's a cycle of dependency, and it is no accident. Propaganda systems magnify it. Governments broadcast threat levels like weather forecasts. Media outlets repeat stories of chaos and violence because fear guarantees viewership. Corporations reinforce the narrative that you are vulnerable, incomplete, unprepared, unless you buy what they offer. The cowboy's whisper has become the soundtrack of modern life. Of course, fear is not entirely a fabrication. Terrorism is real. Pandemics are real. Crime, climate change, war, these are not illusions. Just as wolves were real in the wilderness, just as hunger was real for the mother and her children. The danger is not in acknowledging threats. The danger lies in the way fear is used, amplified, and manipulated to build structures of permanent control. Once a people surrender their autonomy to fear, the protector never relinquishes the power granted. Look around, and the evidence is everywhere. Governments maintain emergency powers long after emergencies end. Tech companies harvest data long after the crisis that justified their collection has passed. Media outlets thrive on permanent states of alarm. The machinery of protection, once set in motion, rarely halts. And the individual, the citizen, the consumer, the user, finds themselves caught in the same position as the mother under the stars, wondering, am I safer now, or have I only traded one danger for another? The modern echo is clear. The cowboy's whisper has scaled into a global chorus. Politicians promise safety from enemies, both foreign and domestic. Tech companies promise safety from the chaos of the internet. Corporations promise safety from financial ruin, physical harm, or social isolation. Everywhere we turn, the whisper follows. We'll keep you safe. Just give us more. And so the story of the frontier mother is no longer a story of the past. It is a mirror held up to the present. Her desperate gamble for safety is not just hers, it is ours. Her hunger was literal. Ours is psychological. But the bargain is the same. The question, then, is timeless. What will we surrender in exchange for the promise of safety? And will we one day wake to realize that the price we paid was greater than the danger we feared? The fire burns low in the cowboy's camp. The children, once trembling, are now curled against their mother's side, their hunger softened by the food he shared. For the first time in 3 nights, her body leans into stillness. But beneath that silence, a question lingers like smoke in the dark. At what cost does safety arrive? Because safety is never free. It demands payment. Sometimes that payment is obvious. A coin handed to a sheriff, labor owed to a landowner, loyalty sworn to a soldier. Other times, the cost hides in silence, the unspoken agreement that by accepting protection, you surrender a measure of freedom. History whispers this truth in every era. Villagers who bent the knee to a king were promised the shield of his armies, but in return, they offered taxes, obedience, and their sons for war. Citizens who accepted the watchful eye of a government gained protection from threats both real and imagined, but they surrendered their privacy, their autonomy, their right to dissent. And here, in this quiet desert night, the mother faces the same paradox. The cowboy's whisper, "I'll keep you safe," carries both relief and a hidden bargain. To trust him means binding her fate to his choices. To doubt him means risking starvation in the wilderness. Is she rescued or is she owned? This is the eternal human negotiation. Safety versus freedom. The philosopher Thomas Hobbes believed that in a world without order, life was nasty, brutish, and short. To escape that chaos, people surrender liberty to a sovereign, a ruler who promises peace in exchange for obedience. It is a pact of survival, but also a pact of dependence. And dependence is a double-edged blade. It comforts us, but it cages us. Consider the mother once more. Before she met the cowboy, every step she took was her own. Her freedom was total, and so was her vulnerability. Now, with the cowboy by her side, she feels protected. But each promise of safety subtly reshapes her choices. Will she follow him when he says move? Will she accept his rules when he says what's best? Will she let her children grow under the shadow of his command? Her safety is real, but her independence begins to dissolve. And so, the question stretches outward, beyond the desert, beyond her children's hungry eyes, and into our own lives. What do we give up when we accept the whisper of safety? Do we trade privacy for the convenience of digital protection? Do we surrender freedom of speech for the illusion of social harmony? Do we accept surveillance, censorship, and obedience because someone told us it would shield us from chaos? And when that trade becomes invisible, when we no longer notice the freedom slipping away, the whisper has already become a chain. The cowboy in the story is not evil. He is not tyrant, nor king, nor corrupt official. He is human. He embodies both compassion and control. But that's the danger. Safety rarely appears wearing the mask of oppression. It comes with a smile, a steady hand, a whisper in the dark. It comes as a promise. I'll protect you. Trust me. And when fear is strong enough, trust feels irresistible. Yet perhaps the deeper question is not whether safety costs freedom, but whether freedom can even exist without safety. What is liberty to a starving mother? What is autonomy to children shivering in the cold? Perhaps safety is not the opposite of freedom. Perhaps it is the condition that makes freedom possible. But here lies the paradox. Too much safety suffocates. Too much freedom destroys. The human heart is always trapped between the two. The mother's story forces us to face that dilemma in its rawest form. Do we step into the arms of the cowboy and live under his shadow of protection? Or do we risk the wilderness, clinging to freedom even as it starves us? There is no easy answer. Every society, every family, every individual has made that choice in 1,000 different ways. And so must we. The fire burns low. The cowboy sits watchful, rifle across his knees. The mother closes her eyes, finally at rest. But even in her sleep, the question lingers. Has she found safety, or has she traded freedom for a cage she cannot yet see? The desert night returns. A mother walks beneath the silent sky, her hands clutching the tiny palms of her children. The stars do not move. The ground does not soften. Every shadow threatens. Every sound could mean danger. And then, a voice in the darkness, a cowboy's whisper, "I'll keep you safe." It is a promise older than the West, older than kingdoms, older even than language itself, because the human heart has always longed to hear it. Safety, the promise that quiets our terror, the voice that assures us the storm will not reach us, that the wolves will not find us, that the hunger will be fed. Civilizations were built on that whisper. Empires rose upon it. Religions, governments, armies, corporations, all have leaned close and said, in one form or another, "Do not fear, I'll keep you safe." And like the mother in the wilderness, we believed, because we needed to. But that promise is never simple. For every whisper carries a shadow. Safety from the king costs obedience. Safety from the priest costs your doubt. Safety from the empire costs your freedom. And even the cowboy, kind-eyed, rough-handed, weary from his own battles, carries that same paradox. He offers protection, but he also demands trust. And trust, once given, is never entirely yours again. So the question lingers, not in the story, but in us. How many times have we accepted the whisper without asking its price? When a leader promises protection from enemies unseen, when technology promises to guard our lives by watching every move we make, when society promises peace in exchange for silence, again and again, we surrender pieces of ourselves, and in the morning light, we tell ourselves it was worth it, because fear is louder than freedom, and hunger speaks louder than autonomy. The mother's journey is not a story locked in the past. It is our reflection, flickering like firelight across the walls of history. She is every human who has ever stood on the threshold of despair, listening for a voice in the dark. And the cowboy is every figure, savior, ruler, protector, who has stepped forward to offer safety with the power to both shelter and confine. But perhaps the deeper revelation is this: true safety is never something another can give. No promise, no whisper, no shield can ever fully erase fear. Because fear is not just outside us, it lives within. And as long as we search for someone else to silence it, we will always be vulnerable to the one who says, "Trust me, I'll keep you safe." So where does that leave us? Maybe safety is not the absence of danger. Maybe it is the courage to walk into the night knowing the danger will always be there. Maybe it is not found in a cowboy's whisper, but in the mother's resolve, in the fire of her own endurance. Perhaps the truest safety is born not in surrender, but in strength. The strength to endure hunger, to face fear, to protect what is sacred, even when no one promises to. The fire fades. The desert wind carries the echo of that whisper into silence. The mother closes her eyes. The children rest. And still, across centuries, across nations, across our own lives, the question remains: who do we trust to keep us safe? And what will it cost us when we say yes? The whisper lingers. It always has. It always will. But perhaps the only voice we can truly believe is the one that rises within,